the Joe Louis Honda Michelin Championship from Race City Speedway in Calgary, Alberta. Hello everyone, I'm Sandra Neal, and this is our second broadcast of Canada's longest-running showroom stock racing series. These equally prepared Honda Civics have been thrilling racing fans for 15 years, and this marks the third season in which there's been an Eastern and Western championship. But regardless of East and West, the real excitement is from the drivers. Here's Pat Gonzalez with a look at what it takes to go through this course in Calgary.
On any road course, the most important turns are the ones just before a big long straightaway section. Many drivers will actually sacrifice speed and adjust their lines in a previous corner to make sure they're carrying maximum speed through that last turn that leads out onto the big straightaway section. Here at Race City Speedway, the drivers in the Joe Louis Honda Michelin Championship take that approach one step further. They will use the speed bumps here in the chicane to their advantage, actually widening the racetrack that they have to use, creating greater speeds coming out of this chicane area. But the risk they take is that once you're up on these speed bumps, the slightest mistake, and you'll put a couple of wheels off into the dirt. That'll unbalance and slow the car down and may even damage suspension parts. Or even worse, you can spin the car in this section of the racetrack and you're going to end up over in this concrete retaining wall that lines the exit out of the chicane. Using the speed bumps properly can mean critical tenths of a second per lap. And Sandra, it'll be interesting to see which drivers can find the fast lines over the speed bumps here in the chicane for the run up the back straightaway at Race City Speedway.
Thank you very much, Pat. Now with me is Peter Dunn, racing in car number 8. And Peter, you qualified beautifully. You're going to be in the front row for the race. What do you see happening going into that first turn?
Well, this morning warm-up, we didn't seem to have a whole lot of power, so hopefully I'll have to get a good jump off the start and lead it back into turn 1.
Lots of luck to you.
Thanks.
It looks like Peter Dunn is going to have his hands full in this race. And Pat, I think the one that he's going to feel the heat from immediately is driver Tony Morris Jr.
Sandra, there's no doubt about that. The Middlegate Honda driver has run car number 12 to an impressive season-opening win and has the pole for today's race. He'll be very tough to beat.
And we'll be back with the start of the Joe Louis Honda Michelin Championship race from Calgary, Alberta in just a moment.
In Calgary, Alberta, I'm Pat Gonzalez with Sandra Neal for the Joe Louis Honda Michelin Championship.
Welcome back to Race City Speedway in Calgary. The cars are ready for the first pace lap. Here's Pat Gonzalez with the grid.
Points leader Tony Morris Jr. of Port Moody, BC is the pole sitter. He drives the number 12 Middlegate Honda Civic. Beside him on row 1 is Peter Dunn of Surrey, BC. He'll be in the number 8 Vancouver Honda machine. On row number 2, Mike Boyle drives the number 20 STP-sponsored Honda, and Danny Yu joins him on the second row in the Rex Regal number 3 Civic. Ken Staples posted the 5th fastest qualifying time. He starts beside John Kwong in the 15 car. These third-row starters will carry onboard Sony cameras in this race.
In row 4, Lawrence Howlett and Darren Gordon. In row number 5, Tim Power and Glenn Nishiyama. Row number 6, Ernie Romano beside Dominic Daly. In row 7, Gary Ledbetter and Don Brew. Row 8, Jenny Ihatzi and Dick Esty. And in row 9, Dennis Nisbet and John Hone. Row number 10, Dennis Gorick and Rod Matthews. Row 11, Ken Donahue and Jeff Edgar. Row 12, Andrew Chan and Jerry McDade. And rounding up the field in row 13, 21, Pavel Vitek.
The field has cleared the carousel as they come on to the starting straightaway. There's the green flag. Peter Dunn and Tony Morris Jr. side by side as the field takes the green flag here in Calgary. Now the drivers will try to pick up a drafting partner for the long run down this half-mile long straightaway here at Calgary, and we go 3 wide for the lead. Danny Yu, Peter Dunn, and Tony Morris Jr. battling off the end of the straightaway as they set it up for the run into turn 1. And Peter Dunn right in the middle of the pack will take the lead as they go into turn 1 as you ride on board with Ken Staples in the number 19 car. There's your leader, Peter Dunn, in that black number 8 Civic. Race here for second place as the number 20 car moves through into the number 2 spot. Mike Boyle has taken over that second place position. Tony Morris Jr. runs back in third. So the pole sitter Morris getting shuffled back to third off the start. You ride with John Kwong in the number 15 car as he's just a car length back of Tim Power in that number 22 Civic. Those two drivers having a good run. Into the chicane for the first time, Peter Dunn, your race leader, followed by Mike Boyle, and then it is Tony Morris Jr. Here's your leader, Dunn. Oh, he goes out onto the grass.
Dunn is in trouble. Oh, right into that big pool of water. Mud going everywhere. Back onto the racetrack as some of the other drivers have to take evasive action and cut to the middle of the racetrack. You can't take the proper line now as you come out of that chicane because Dunn has thrown all kinds of mud onto the racetrack. The new race leader, number 20, Mike Boyle, through the carousel for the first time with Tony Morris Jr. and Lawrence Howlett in tow.
But Pat, an unfortunate incident for Peter Dunn. He is just spinning his wheels in the mud. He is stuck, but he's not giving up trying to get back into this race.
You ride on board with the second place driver, Tony Morris Jr., as he pulls up alongside of Mike Boyle, going for the lead side by side off the end of the long straightaway here at Calgary. Morris on the inside, up to the outside is Boyle, and Tony Morris Jr. will take the lead as they go to turn number 1. A beautiful display of drafting and then passing under braking going into that first corner by young Tony Morris Jr. Boyle, though, will stick that STP Honda right behind the Morris machine as they head out of turn number 3.
And Lawrence Howlett and Danny Yu are in 3rd and 4th places, respectively. Now, Pat, the track is dry right now, but the Calgary area has had literally weeks of steady, heavy rains. The ground is extremely wet, and the puddles just off the track are deep enough that the shaved Michelin XGT radials these cars are running on today just can't get any traction, and that's why Peter Dunn is stuck.
Sandra, all of these drivers have chosen the slicks for today's race, but that means Peter Dunn is literally bogged down and probably won't be able to get back into this race.
Here's our leader, Tony Morris Jr., followed by Boyle, Howlett, Danny Yu, and Tim Power. Then there's John Kwong, Ken Staples, and Don Brew, who got a great start and is already 8th after starting 14th. Rounding up the field, Ernie Romano and Darren Gordon.
The leader is still Tony Morris Jr., and if you've just joined us, here's what happened on lap 1. The leader, Peter Dunn, had already gained 4 car lengths on the second place car of Mike Boyle, but slid off the track at the exit from the chicane. He got into the mud and water that lines this track virtually everywhere after heavy rains at Calgary, and he got stuck.
And Pat, it looks like Peter's given up trying to get back into this race. He's simply embedded in the mud and is going to be a spectator for the remainder of the race.
Tony Morris Jr. out of the chicane, and there you can see the drivers having to cut to the middle of the back straightaway to avoid all that mud that's been thrown up onto the racetrack. Tony Morris Jr. in that middle gate Honda leading the field up into the carousel. He has opened up about 5 or 6 car lengths on Mike Boyle in the number 20 STP car. Running in 3rd is Lawrence Howlett in the black number 9 car. Then a bit of a gap, about 2 or 3 car lengths back to Danny Yu. Right behind Danny Yu is Tim Power in the number 22 car, and then John Kwong in car number 15.
An 18-year-old John Kwong doing quite well for his first season of racing. He qualified 6th, and he still hangs on to 6th position. We're on board now with Rod Matthews, who teams up with leader Tony Morris Jr. Now, Matthews is working his way up, trying to make some ground up on the leaders after starting 20th. He's about to make a pass, and yesterday we talked to Rod about his team's chances for this event.
Tony Morris has always been running at the front of the pack. I'm not scared to say he's faster than me. The guy's definitely got the talent. But if I can get up there and run with him, great. I know he's got some tough competition at the very front with Dunn, Howlett, and Boyle, Power. But as it stands right now, if I can stay in somewhere in the top 7 and better my best position of a 7th place, then I'll be happy.
And Matthews has a long way to go if he's to get up to 7th. There is a 3-way battle for the position between Don Brew, 97 Ernie Romano, and Ken Staples in the 19 Civic.
Ken Staples losing ground to Romano up the back straightaway, but he'll close it up under braking as the battle for 7th moves into the carousel. That yellow 16 car of Don Brew holding on to 7th. There's Romano in the 97 car looking for a pass on the inside as they run through the carousel. There's some of the young race fans here at Calgary enjoying the action. Tony Morris Jr., the leader in the number 12 Middlegate Honda Civic, continues to hold off Mike Boyle in the number 20 STP Civic. They run 1-2, then a bit of a gap back to Lawrence Howlett in 3rd. Here's that great 3-way fight for 7th involving Don Brew in that yellow 16 car, number 97 Ernie Romano, the Edmonton driver, and then back in the 9th place position is Ken Staples. The leader, Tony Morris Jr., through the chicane, going up out of the speed curbing. Mike Boyle, I think, put a couple of wheels right off the track there for a moment. It doesn't cost them too much time as they head up the back straightaway here at Calgary. The front-running 6 drivers have really pulled away from the rest of the field. Tony Morris Jr. by about 5 car lengths over Mike Boyle, then a bit of a gap back to Lawrence Howlett in that black number 9 car in 3rd, and a great 3-way fight for 4th involving Danny Yu, Tim Power, and John Kwong in the 15 car. There's the race for 7th going through, and now look at this side by side. Oh, and contact there between the number 5 car of John Hone and 29 Darren Gordon, both drivers managing to keep their cars on the racetrack. So Hone, number 5, continues to run just ahead of the 29 car of Darren Gordon.
And we take you on board now with John Kwong. John is currently holding 6th position, and he's got to be happy. He's a relative newcomer to this series and is certainly showing well today, Pat.
A good run here for Kwong, despite his lack of experience in the Honda Civic. He's hanging right in there with the lead group. Here's that battle for 7th that's been going on for several laps now. The number 16 car of Don Brew. Here's Ken Staples, looks to the inside of Ernie Romano as they went into turn number 3, looking for the pass up into 8, but Romano will hang on to that 8th place position. The 19 car of Ken Staples runs back in the 9th place position. Tony Morris Jr., the leader, through the chicane. Morris, that letter perfect line as he moves out onto the back straightaway. Mike Boyle in 2nd, Lawrence Howlett 3rd. Danny Yu now being pressured for 4th.
And let's go on board now with Rod Matthews for a bumpy ride through the chicane. 29 is Darren Gordon, just ahead in 12th.
Matthews brings his car to the left side of the racetrack as he sets it up for the entrance into the chicane. Oh, there's Darren Gordon. I believe he's run right off the racetrack. Gordon off the racetrack at the chicane. He spins the race car around. He's in some of that very soft mud. Smoke coming from the engine compartment as some of that water has splashed up on the exhaust system.
A tough break for Gordon, but stay with us. We'll be back with some more gutsy racing action at Calgary for the Joe Louis Honda Michelin Championship in just a moment. Joe Louis Honda Michelin Championship racing from Calgary. I'm Sandra Neal with Pat Gonzalez, and this race continues with bumper-to-bumper action on the front straightaway.
Tony Morris Jr., the leader, has Mike Boyle right on his rear bumper as they peel off the end of the long drag strip straightaway to turn 1. Morris manages to hold on to the lead, but Boyle is right there, just a couple of car lengths back. We've got another great 2-car draft for 3rd involving Lawrence Howlett and Danny Yu. There's that race for 3rd place moving through turn 3. You ride with Ken Staples, who runs back in the 10th place position now after being passed by the 5 car of John Hone, and now Hone trying to turn aside a bid by Staples to retake that 9th place position. A good two-way battle here involving the 5 car of John Hone and number 19 Ken Staples carrying one of our Sony Handycams.
Pat, just moments ago, Jarek McDade went off the track at the chicane, but he was able to gather up his car, get back into the race. However, he hit some of the hay bales that are used here at Calgary during motorcycle racing events, and a number of those bales have broken and are now on the track in the chicane area.
There's the leader, Tony Morris Jr., followed by Mike Boyle, Howlett, and then Danny Yu just about going sideways as he came through the chicane area. That'll pose a problem for the drivers. It'll be quite slick, and you could see the cars sliding as they came on the back straightaway. John Kwong through the chicane area. There you can see the hay still strewn all over the chicane as the drivers try to pick their way through that. The cars are starting to blow some of that hay away, and the racing line starting to clean up a little bit.
Back with car number 15, John Kwong, Pat. Although he appeared a bit nervous at the time, there was no doubt Kwong was pleased with his qualifying performance when I spoke with him yesterday.
Moving up this far, this fast has been really something. If we can hold our position, I'd be happy with that. If I move up, boy, I'm going to be just jumping out of my seat.
Well, the crowd is out of their seat here at Calgary as they look at the lead battle across the start-finish line. Tony Morris Jr. has been reeled back in by Mike Boyle as Boyle works the draft halfway down the straightaway. Boyle will try to slingshot him at the end of this straightaway as they go on the brakes. Boyle, though, this time will tuck in, and there's the battle for 3rd as well. They're tied together. Number 9, Lawrence Howlett, and Danny Yu having a great fight for 3rd. Tony Morris Jr. opens it back out to about 2 or 3 car lengths and about the same distance between the 3rd place car there. That's the black number 9 car of Lawrence Howlett, the racing firefighter, in the 3rd place position, and Danny Yu in that red and white Rex Regal car runs in the 4th place spot.
Here's the action a little further back, Pat. The blue car is number 7, Dick Esty, and he's made steady progress all race long. He's now 10th after starting 18th, and he's just ahead of Ken Staples, Rod Matthews, and Glenn Nishiyama.
That's a great four-way fight. Staples being shuffled back a number of positions after running up as high as ninth. The leaders into the chicane. It is the number 12 car of Tony Morris Jr. And oh, Morris really sliding the car as he comes out of the chicane. The other drivers there in third and fourth, Howlett and you doing the same. And those 6 cars still tied together on the back straightaway. They'll be coming up to lap some of the slower cars here in a moment as the leader, Tony Morris Jr. and Mike Boyle, run it through the carousel here at Calgary. Again, it's pretty much single file through this section of the racetrack. Not really much of an opportunity to pass, and you ride with the leader, Tony Morris Jr., as he comes out onto the straightaway. They'll be coming up across the start-finish line in front of a packed grandstand here at Race City Speedway. The leader, Tony Morris Jr., closes on that 86 lime green car of Jeff Edgar, the Vancouver driver, about to go a lap down here at Race City Speedway in Calgary.
And here's the top 10 as it stands now. In front, Tony Morris Jr., followed by Boyle, Howlett, Danny Yu, and Tim Power. Holding on to 6th position is John Kwong, followed by Ernie Romano, Don Brew, John Honan. In 10th position, Dick Estee.
Into turn number 1, there is the car of Edgar, the 86 car. Number 12, Tony Morris and Mike Boyle make the pass. So Edgar very courteously moves out of the racing line and allows the first and second place cars through. Tony Morris Jr., your leader by just a couple of car lengths. Then it is Mike Boyle in the second place position. And Boyle has had a great run here at Calgary after having some problems at Westwood Motorsport Park, where he failed to crack the top 5 in the season opening event. You're on board with the third place driver, Lawrence Howlett, as he moves around the 86 car of Jeff Edgar going into the chicane.
And it is a bumpy ride, Pat. Lawrence Howlett described it earlier.
Fast part of the track, you're doing probably 140 kilometers an hour through it, and you've got to make a fast right-hand turn, left-hand turn, followed by a right-hand turn that leads onto a straightaway, so it's important to get out of it quick. And everyone's pushing hard to get onto that straightaway fast, and that straightaway speed will just carry you right on down to the next corner. So it's tough to get out of there quick because it's rough and bouncing off the curbs, and a lot of fun.
A lot of fun. And here's Ernie Romano having some fun now, too. At the expense of Don Brew, however, in the number 16 Kamloops Honda, Romano is now 7th.
Romano and Brew have been having a war for that 7th place position. Romano goes wide out of turn number 3. He'll put a couple of wheels off on the dirt. That will allow Don Brew to pull up alongside as the two battle door handle to door handle up the short straightaway. Romano in the 97 car, Don Brew in that yellow number 16, and here comes John Hone in the 5 car. He will join the battle, bringing along Dick Estee in the number 7 car as well. So here is another pack of cars as they battle out of the chicane and onto the back straightaway. It is the 16 car of Don Brew who leads the freight train as they head for the carousel. Brew is now the 7th place driver. Rod Matthews in the number 14 car looks like he's got the exhaust system dragging as he heads to the carousel.
And Pat, that exhaust coming off could be a real danger, not necessarily to Matthews, but to the cars behind him.
Here you are with Ken Staples. Oh, he just about locks it up and just about ran into the side of the 14 car there of Rod Matthews, who is being slowed by that exhaust that's dragging down on the racetrack. Ken Staples out onto the start-finish straightaway as we go back to the lead battle. Here is number 20, Mike Boyle, looks to the inside on Tony Morris Jr. into turn 1, and Boyle has taken the lead. A beautiful job of drafting the leader, Tony Morris Jr., down the straightaway, and then under-braking as they went into turn 1. Mike Boyle was able to push his STP number 20 car back out in front. So Tony Morris Jr., who has been running in the lead since early in this race, now being pushed back into second. There you could see Mike Boyle motioning to Tony Morris Jr. as Boyle got up out of the speed curbing, and these two drivers have really done a marvelous job of helping each other along that back straightaway and the long front straightaway in the draft to help pull each other along. Mike Boyle, the driver out of Coquitlam, British Columbia, is clear of the chicane, works the back straightaway with Tony Morris Jr. in tow just a few car lengths back. They'll be coming up on 2 cars here to put them a lap down. The first car they'll hit is the 25 car here of Jerry McDade. McDade not knowing exactly what to do. Now he finally moves off of the racing line and allows the 20 car of Boyle and the number 12 car of Tony Morris Jr. to move through on the inside as they run through the carousel. Out onto the long straightaway now. Boyle moves to the inside of the 32 car of Andrew Chan, and they will put Chan a lap down as they come across the start-finish line.
Stay with us. We'll be back with more action from Calgary in just a moment. Joe Louis Honda Michelin Championship at Race City Speedway near Calgary, Alberta. I'm Sandra Neal with Pat Gonzalez, and we are in the closing laps of this race with Mike Boyle continuing to lead and Tony Morris Jr. close behind. And Pat, these two have been nose to tail since lap number 2.
Boyle and Morris drafting each other down into turn 1, and yesterday when we weren't sure what the weather would be like for today's race, Boyle talked about a teamwork strategy.
In the pouring rain, I don't think we can work too much together. In the dry, we could do a little, help each other a little bit. We could probably work together quite nicely, drafting down the back and the front straight. So we'll see what happens.
Well, this is what happens. Both Boyle in the number 20 STP car and the number 12 Middlegate Honda of Tony Morris Jr. have led this race, and they have been able to stretch their lead out over the rest of the field. Boyle, number 20, continues to lead. Now you ride along with Tony Morris Jr., who closes to within about a half a car length, almost running into the rear bumper there of Mike Boyle as they run through the chicane and head out onto the back straightaway. They continue to carve their way up through the field. The number 9 car of Lawrence Howlett runs in third. There's Danny Hughes still back in that 4th place position as they have cleared the chicane. And oh, we've got a spin at the chicane. The number 25 car of Jerry McDade has slid off the racetrack out into the dirt and mud. McDade gets it back on the track. Oh, now he loops it back around again off the racetrack. So McDade having all kinds of problems. Finally, he's able to get the car straightened out and continues up the back straightaway. Here are the leaders coming to the line. The last lap board being displayed here at start-finish. We've got just 1 lap to go. Mike Boyle, your leader, but Tony Morris Jr. is right there on his rear bumper as they head down the straightaway.
And look at this, Pat. It looks like young 20-year-old Tony Morris Jr. is making his move to challenge for the lead.
Morris pulls up alongside of the number 20 car of Mike Boyle. Tony Morris Jr. inside into turn number 1, and he will muscle the lead away from Mike Boyle as we've got less than a lap to go through turn number 3 now. Tony Morris Jr. looking for his 2nd win in a row. He won the season opener in the Western Joe Louis Honda Michelin Championship on his home track at Westwood, and he leads here at Calgary with less than a lap to go. Mike Boyle just a couple of car lengths back as they run through the chicane now for the final time, and out onto the back straightaway, Tony Morris Jr. opening it up to 4 or 5 car lengths.
And Pat, more last lap action moves. Rod Matthews has gone to 9th. John Hone has been pushed to 11th behind Dick Esty.
Rod Matthews and Dick Esty have both had great runs here at Calgary after having their problems in qualifying. As we look at the leaders into the carousel now for the final time, Tony Morris Jr. by about 2 car lengths as Mike Boyle closes under braking going through the carousel. They're about to come out onto the long straightaway. The checkered flag is out at the line, and Tony Morris Jr. in a victory salute wins his 2nd Joe Louis Honda Michelin Championship in our Western Series. A brilliant run with a last lap pass.
And a very jubilant winner. Now here it is officially in car number 12, Tony Morris Jr., the victor, followed by in car number 20, Mike Boyle. Car number 9, Lawrence Howlett finished 3rd. Danny Yu in car number 3 finished 4th. And in 5th, 22, Tim Power.
The rest of the top 10, John Kwong in 6th, Romano 7th, Brew 8th, Rod Matthews 9th, and Dick Esty 10th. Here's Sandra in victory lane.
Thank you very much, Pat. Right now I have Tony Morris Jr., the race winner. And Tony, what a race. Tell us what happened going the first turn.
Well, I didn't get a great start, so I was back in 3rd. Just got in line. It was a little bit of havoc, but I just kept my cool. Pete fell off. That's too bad for Pete, but that happens.
You got a lot of pressure from veteran Mike Boyle.
Yeah, he drove a good race, but we worked together. We talked about it before the race, and it worked. We just worked together and pulled away, and so forth and so forth.
Thank you very much, and congratulations. It looks like you could take it all this season.
I hope so.
An appreciative crowd here in Calgary after some great Joe Louis Honda Michelin Championship racing. And Tony Morris Jr. is now being called to the victory podium to join Mike Boyle and Lawrence Howlett.
We've got 3 happy finishers on the podium here in Calgary. Next week, we'll be taking you back east to Montreal and Ile Notre Dame. We'll see you then.